What's going on, guys? MariK here, back with another Dragon Ball Super deck profile. We've been making a lot of changes to our content, as you can see with the new intro. We've also been trying to work on all the different deck profiles we've been trying to do. We should have 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 coming up this week. I'll have to double check to make sure. That number might be a little bit off, but we will see. Today was our first chance to play with the deck we've been experimenting with in a competitive environment, and this is a deck that we are considering taking to the upcoming regional in September. We went back to our roots with the deck we are most comfortable with, and it is our boy, the champion of the Tournament of Power, Android 17.
Well, all right then, old timer, draw!
I love this leader. Has been one of my favorite all the way from set 2. Fantastic ability that reduces the energy cost of all your 17 and 18s in your hand by 1. So any of your 3 costs you can all play for 2, which is ridiculous considering what their abilities do. And he is one of the few leaders that doesn't awaken at 4 life. He instead awakens at 6. Really easy for your opponent to awaken you, to get your draw 2 on awakening, and to start drawing every time he attacks. When he awakens into Diabolical Duo Android 17 and 18. He keeps the ability that reduces the energy cost of 17 18s by 1. And if your life is 4 or less, all of your Android 17 18s gain 5,000 power. That's why he starts at 10,000 and he awakens at 10,000. But his permanent includes himself, so then he becomes 15,000. All of your other battle cards, 17 and 18, gain the 5,000 as well, which is crucial with what all of these cards do. And then, of course, when he attacks, draw a card. We're going to cover up his nemesis, Cell, because this is a pure Android deck. Cell is not involved. That was the goal, anyways. And it turned out pretty well, if I may say so myself. I may consider playtesting with it more, and possibly running pure Androids without the Cell engine at the regional. Up first, we play 3 Dr. Giro, Evil's Inventor.
Soon I will unleash Android 17 and 18 to destroy you all!
We played 3 because, well, we just didn't need 4. We don't usually play this on turn 1. We usually keep our energy open for negates and other things just because we are running green, and we have 2 of the best negates in the game right now. Dr. Giro is a really good searcher, and I'll play him if I need the draw. But more often than not, he doesn't get played till about turn 3 or 4. So sometimes he's just extra combo fodder, sometimes he's energy. But he does occasionally get played and get me that extra search. The first of our pure androids is Chilling Terror, Android 17.
Away from me, you murderer!
We run 4 of these. I have been in love with this card since Tournament Pack 2 first came out. This is one of the coolest arts. The foil is fantastic. The ability is not super great. Depending on what leader you're playing against, you may want to side it out, which is what I plan to do. I keep it main decked because a lot of people are still playing Super Saiyan 3. A lot of people are still playing Trunks. So it does help against those 2 decks. But he's a 3-cost, 15,000 that says if your leader card is an android, the opponent cannot draw cards when they awaken. They can still awaken, they just don't get to draw 2, which is really good to keep your opponent's momentum down. And since he's an Android 17, you can play him for 2 instead of 3. So if you want to play him early on to kind of prevent your opponent from awakening, or to force them to play some removal to get rid of him, then he's probably one of the best cards you could play. And if you're playing against someone running Harudegarn or the Blue Vegeta, you know, any of the untapped 2 on awaken, you can either just charge him or you can just side him out altogether, whichever. Then we run 4 Energy Guard Android 17. He's also a 3-cost, 15,000 with blocker, and at the end of your turn, you switch him to active mode. So you can actually attack and still block on your turn. Pretty fantastic. And he's a 15k blocker you can play for 2 energy. That's not bad, and he attacks. This is easily one of the best Android 17s we've had, and personally, it's one of my favorite cards to play in the deck. Then we run 4 Dreadful Duo Android 17. He's a 3-cost, 15,000 with crit. And once per turn for 1 green energy, if an opponent's battle card with the energy cost of 3 or less was placed in their drop area from any area by one of your skills, you can choose up to 1 Android 18 with energy cost of 3 or less from your hand and play it, which is pretty dope. As of right now, we only have 2 Android 18s we can take advantage of that with. One of them is the Dreadful Duo, and the other is the Twin Sister. Until we get a 4-cost, we won't be able to take advantage of that as much. Because with it being 4 in your hand, it's going to be 3, and then it can be played via this Android 17. I think I did hit this ability once during the day, and played the Dreadful Duo 18, but more or less he's just a 15,000 or 20,000 once you're at 4 life crit attacker, and for 2 energy, that is a pretty powerful card in my opinion. Up next, we have the twin sister Dreadful Duo Android 18. She's also at 3 cost, 15,000 with crit. Her once per turn, however, is a bit different. For 1 green energy, during the turn, if an opponent's battle card with energy cost of 4 or more was placed in the drop area from any area by one of your skills, choose one of your opponent's battle cards with energy cost 3 or less and KO that card. Not as great as the 17. I like the 17 because he can play an 18 for free. But the 18 more or less is just there for crit. And because she is an android, her ability could be useful, but I think there was only one time that I could have used it, and it just wasn't even really that big of a deal, to be honest. Up next, we have the newest contender in the Android lineup, Limitless Energy Android 17. He's a 4 cost, 20,000 with blocker and barrier. And when you play this card, if your leader card is green, choose up to one of your opponent's battle cards and KO it. So, essentially, he's a 3 cost, 20 to 25,000 blocker with barrier, and he gets to KO anything on the board. That is disgustingly sick. I have no idea why my camera is freaking out right now, but it could be because this card is fantastic, and even more fantastic is the fucking foiling. I love this card. I need to get more foils for it because it's so good. But this card right here is fantastic. You can play it, KO anything, and then you've got a 25k blocker that can't be KO'd by card effects that target. That's just fantastic. Then we've got our finisher. We run 4 Exterminating Energy Android 18. She's a 5 or 4 cost, 20 to 25,000 with double strike. And when it attacks a leader card, your opponent chooses 1 card from their hand and places it in the drop area. So she's really good for finishing off a weakened opponent. You get to rip a card out of their hand. She's already 25, double strikes coming in. And if you got a super combo or 2, you're just going to rip them apart. She goes really well in tandem with the Mira and Toei Overrealms to be able to remove cards out of their hand before you make that final push for game. Then we have one of the luckiest men himself. We run 4 Destined Deed Krillin. He's a 2 cost 5,000 blocker, but because if you have an Android 18 in your battle area or leader area, you can play him for free. So as soon as you awaken, you can play this card for free, or if you drop the 2-drop 18, you can then drop him as well. That was pretty much what I did, was summon the 18, attack with it, get your crit damage, play the Krillin. The 18 usually died on the next turn, but the point was we got that free Krillin blocker out there, and 9 times out of 10, there just wasn't any need to protect her because the free blockers are in there for bigger attacks that we can't combo out of. And the 18 has pretty much done her job. Yeah, it's a crit attacker, but we've got plenty more in the deck, and we can kind of live without them. And right now, with the way the meta is, free blockers are so valuable right now. Then we have the Evil Mistress, Dark Temptation Toei. We run 4 of her. She's a 3 cost Overrealm 3 with 15,000 power. When you play this card using Overrealm, if your leader is green or yellow, choose one of your leader cards, and it gains 5,000 power for the duration of the turn, and your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and places it in the drop area. Now, we were running 4 of the Mira with the same effect, but we decided to swap to Toei because it gives that extra 5,000. Essentially the same thing. However, it is not an Android, so you can't search it via Dr. Giro. Granted, we don't play the Dr. Giro very much, but I said this on the way up to the tournament because I almost didn't use this and stuck with the Mira, is I knew for a fact the first time I played Dr. Giro, I was going to miss, and it was going to be because Toei was the only card I could have gotten if it would have been a Mira. And sure enough, it was. I played a Giro on my first turn, game 1, and I flipped over a Toei and 2 Krillin blockers. Felt pretty bad, not gonna lie, but that extra 5k that she gives is so fantastic, and the foil is just amazing. The purple is so gorgeous. I absolutely love this card. Then we ran 4 of our super combo, Trunks, Protector of Children. Now I know what you're thinking. Trunks with an Android leader? An Android deck? Well, it's because without the cell chain, Android 16 loses a lot of luster. Personally, I think he's only good with the cell chain, simply because you can rip your opponent's hand down to 3, and then you can rip it down even further with the Mira/Toa and the Android 16 super combo. But without it, I feel like the discarding 1 really isn't that helpful compared to you getting to draw a card, especially since your opponent's going to pick the least useful card that they have. So, since we weren't running the cell chain, I thought the Trunks was a good idea. Plus, younger Trunks with a pure Android deck, it just kind of seemed to fit. Kind of like, you know, this Trunks and Androids. I know it's not the same Trunks, but I just kind of like the idea of it. Then we ran 4 of everybody's favorite negate, Full Power Energy. It's a 1-cost green negate that says negate the attack, and then choose an opponent's battle card with energy cost 1 or less and KO it. And there's so many 1 or less cards to KO. You got 1-drop Trunks, the Gohan, the Kaba, Bardock, even Grandpa Gohan if they're playing that swap engine. It's so good. This card is crazy good, and it's definitely one of the best negates in the game right now. And speaking of one of the best negates in the game right now, we also run 4 Speedy Surprise Attack. I actually really like this card. I think it's fantastic. It's also a 1-cost negate, but it says if your leader card is an android, you may place 1 card from your hand in the drop area, and if you do so, choose up to 1 of your opponent's battle cards with an energy cost of 3 or less and KO it. So essentially we have 8 negates that can KO things we don't want to stay on the board. And even though this one you have to discard a card, you can choose anything from a 1 to a 3 drop, which is fantastic. This card came in clutch so many times today, just ripping my opponent's boards apart. Then for our last 3, we teched in a bit of spice for the deck. We've got 3 King Vegeta Surprise Attack. This card actually came in clutch as well. It sealed the deal during one of our matches. It's a 1-cost activate battle that says choose up to 1 of your battle cards. It gains plus 10,000 power and Revenge, which Revenge KOs an attacking card after the battle. So whether the battle card you play it on survives or not, your opponent's battle card's going to die, and it gets around barrier because it doesn't choose, it just says die. So this card, coupled with the free blocker Krillin, the 3-drop Android 17, or the 4-drop Android 17, they're all blockers. They all force your opponent to attack them, and King Vegeta forces them to die. It is beautiful. I had 4 of these in there, and I decided to cut it down to 3 just because it wasn't completely necessary, and we didn't always have the energy for it. So we upped Dr. Gero from 2 to 3, just because he can be a 5k combo if we need him to. Whereas King Vegeta, just without the blockers, it's not as good, and I can't play King Vegeta on my leader, which was one of the most frustrating things of the card. Now for the side deck, I really had no idea what to do for the side deck. I hadn't had the time to think of it, and a couple friends of mine had convinced me to just throw this in the side deck just in case. So we ran 3 Growing Evil Lifeform Cell.
Hey, what is that thing?
You all know what our boy Cell does. There we go. He's a 3-cost, 15,000. You get a Union Absorb and place an Android 17 underneath him to evolve him into a Cell with a cost of 5 or less. So ideally, we're going to go into Evolving Evil Lifeform Cell. We ran 3 of these. He's a 5-cost, 20,000 and with Double Strike. And when you play this card via Union Absorb, you get to draw a card and KO an opponent's battle card. And you can activate his Union Absorb by placing an Android 18 underneath him and evolve him into any Cell in the deck, which includes himself if you chose to for that extra draw and the extra KO. Or Perfect Force Cell, the badass of the archetype. He's a 7-cost, 30,000 with Double Strike. You could evolve him for 2 green and 4 other, but you're rarely ever going to play Cell that way. And when you play this card, if your leader card is an android, your opponent must choose cards until there are only 3 remaining in the hand, and place the remaining cards in the drop area. He is fantastic. He's a great finisher. Really, I didn't find a whole lot of use for him today. I did side them in all of 1 time, and that's just because I wasn't quite sure. if it would help my predicament. But if your opponent did not have enough cards that it was worth ripping out of their hand, you could go into Vile Replication Cell. We ran 3 of him. He's a 5 cost, 20,000. And when you play this card, if your leader's an android, you get to draw 2 cards and get out 2 Cell Junior tokens, which are 10,000 power with 0 combo cost and 5,000 combo power. This is a great card for getting some card advantage and a little bit of defense, and he's still a 20k body that you can go ahead and hit your opponent with. The last 3 cards in the side deck were a tech for cards that I had overheard that were being played today, and it was 3 Time Control Chronoa. Really, yellow is not seeing a lot of play right now, as blue is pretty much dominating the meta. Blue is dominating locals even. For the most part, that's all we seem to play against, so that's what we battle against the most part. But Time Control Chronoa was a last-minute addition. She's a 1 cost 3,000 with Deflect, and when you play this card, you get to draw a card, and your opponent may not play battle cards from their hand with the skills of super combos. So it pretty much shuts down Shugesh, which I heard a few people were running, so I decided to go ahead and side deck it just in case. We didn't play against them, but if we did, we would have sided those in and completely killed that shit ASAP. We were not having none of it. They'll still get the plus 10,000, but they're not dropping no Saiyans, no explosive Gokus, none of that shit at all. Round 1, we played against Blue Yellow Storm, and that deck is disgusting. Just all the stuff they do, all the cards they draw, and surprisingly, we ended up taking them down. Game 1, it wasn't a whole lot of a struggle there for us. We considered siding in Cell when he sided some stuff in, but considering how well Pure Androids did, I really wanted to try them again and see if we could pull out the W without relying on Cell. So we decided not to swap them in. We played the deck as was, and we still managed to survive through their onslaughts and slowly whittle away down their cards via crit, via all the blockers, and just stopping all those things from happening. It was really a lot of fun. I just did not expect us to be able to have that great of a matchup against it. Round 2, we ended up playing against Mono Red Pan, and that matchup is a little more difficult just because they've got the Topos, and this player in particular plays Legic. He also plays the free Giru blocker. So a lot of blocks in the gates there, kind of like our own deck, but Pan hits a little harder and generates a little more advantage. Getting to draw once a turn just from playing battle cards is crazy. So they kept up the hand advantage pretty well. They ended up beating us in Game 1. Game 2, we side decked into the Cell. I thought maybe it would help against the hand advantage, and he did not see a single Cell card played at all Game 1. So he wasn't quite sure if we were running Cell or not. Because we didn't play one, and we kind of misplayed twice. We got a little greedy trying to keep his battle cards off the board, so we did play a 3-drop Cell just to attack that battle card because we had 4 open energy and 0 other cards to play. I think we had like 2 super combos in hand, maybe a negate. We had like 6 cards in hand, and all we could play was Cell. We had 2 3-drop Cells. We had a 17 and an 18, and I was trying to hold on to that stuff for the perfect time to Cell chain. And I did end up Cell chaining him and just ripping his cards away and then playing a Toei. But I screwed up the order of things I was supposed to do. He ended up with a Topo on the board. I got greedy, which I knew I shouldn't have, and I attacked with a 5-drop to try and get a few cards in his hand. I thought he only had 1 energy open. Turns out he had 2, and he was able to Topo and stop the attack, so it got a card down out of his hand. And the reason I misplayed is because I also played the 4-drop Android 17 after evolving into the 5-drop Cell. I KO'd one of his cards, and then I played the 17, and had I known he had the 2 energy open, I would have kept the 17 in my hand. That way when he did Topo, then I'd play the 17 anyways, and I would be able to KO the Topo when it hit the board, and I wouldn't have to worry about protecting all my stuff. Because even if I were to block with the Krillin on the Topo's attack, if he kills the Krillin, he's still going to switch back to active, and I was trying not to let that happen, so I had to combo a little heavier resource-wise. Not on the Krillin. I think I blocked with the Android 17 3-drop blocker. But either way, it was a dumb move on my part. It ended up costing me because I had to invest too much in getting rid of that second Topo when I could have just KO'd him with the Android 17. Just was a poor mistake on my part. In my defense, though, we had like 30-something people standing around us, standing behind us. There was a fighting game tournament that was supposed to happen yesterday that didn't happen because a charity event was happening, so that was moved to today, and it was so hard to concentrate and focus with all of that going on. And do I think that would have helped me if I would have been able to pay a little more attention? I think so. Doesn't mean I would have beaten the Pan player. Absolutely not. He's a fantastic player, and he's really good with Pan. He's probably the best Pan player we have. Maybe besides my teammate. I'm not sure which one's better at it, but it would have made a difference if I had actually been able to focus and play in a quieter environment like we're normally used to. But he ended up 2-0ing me, and round 3, I played against a teammate running Buhan, and not only running Buhan with the new Ultimate Box Vegeta Leader. It's a deck idea we came up with last weekend on the drive home, and the deck is sick. The deck is disgusting. Basically, you can charge any of the Boo cards you don't need. You can charge the one that gives Barrier, Donna Rampage, or you can charge the Awakening Evil, just whatever. Until you need it, you can Awaken with Vegeta, take it back to your hand, and it's like having just another card pool to be able to draw from. It's pretty sick. We both drew pretty fucking poorly. Game 1 and Game 2. So our games did go to about 4 or 5 energy, which is not particularly normal for this game, but the way his deck works with evolving stuff, and the way mine works with critting away all your things, and just making you discard here and there, we actually ended up critting away multiple Grand Evil Absorption Majin Boos, and so it pretty much killed his Saiyan into Buhan. It did still leave him with Ultimate Evil, but at that point, all we had to do is negate the Ultimate Evil, and we could KO it with several cards we run. Game 2, he did attempt to swing at me for game. He did get off the Grand Evil Absorption chain and went for blood. He had actually Union absorbed the new Burst Attack Gohan, the one that has crit and gives you the extra draw too, and he was going to go in for some major damage, but we ended up using the Krillin blocker and then comboed with that King Vegeta surprise attack just to remove that thing off the board. He did have Barrier, he had that Boo underneath it, but King Vegeta doesn't care about Barrier, so we just go ahead and eliminated that, and at that point there was just nothing he could do. All his resources had been committed, and we just took game from there. So all in all, it was a really fun day, really fun event, and I think pure androids might have a chance. I feel like they're a different type of anti-meta than, say, Cell Chain, where Cell Chain is just, hey, I'm going to rip your card advantage away. But after that, it doesn't really do a whole lot. Whereas I feel like this deck limits what your opponent can do. Just because I've got 12 blockers, 8 negates. I've got the 4 King Vegetas that KO stuff. I've got the 4-drop Android 17 that KO stuff. So I've got negates, I've got blockers, I've got board removal. It's pretty crazy. I definitely need a better side deck, and if you guys have any suggestions for a side deck, let me know. I'll definitely be sure to try it out next weekend, because I will be probably playing this deck in tournaments every weekend up until the regional. I want to get a good steady amount of playtesting before we go to a big event, because this will be only the second big event we've gone to for DBS, and I want it to be a lot better than the last one we attended. But that's going to go ahead and wrap it up for this deck profile. I did not realize how long we had been going on about this deck. I just love Android so much. It was the first deck that we ever played in a tournament, the first deck we ever built, and the first deck we ever won in a tournament. And we got the, the dope-ass Union Force sleeves. I know they're not the greatest sleeves in the world, but it was our first victory, so I was like, you know what, you guys earned them. And that was back when I was still running pure Androids, because I couldn't afford to get 4 of the 7-drop cells, and for whatever reason, the 5-drop cell just seemed to be a short print. But if you guys enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed the deck profile, if you love androids as much as I do, make sure you hit that like button down below for us. We appreciate the support. We appreciate all of our subscribers as well. We're almost to 1,050. We've been climbing up the rank, and you guys have been killing it with all the support, the likes, the comments. You guys have just been murdering all of our Dragon Ball content, and we really do appreciate that. We do really want to get more Dragon Ball content out to you guys because you really enjoy it. We're still going to continue doing deck profiles for other decks, despite our playtesting for the regionals. And we'll still have the spoiler reveals for you for the new sets. We still got the super rares. We still got the secret rares coming out. So we've got plenty of Dragon Ball content coming for you guys. And we might even start streaming some of our playtesting for the regional event as well. I know some people have requested it, and we just haven't acted on it. And we might go ahead and do that if enough people show interest in it. We're going to go ahead and get the frig out of here now, though, and we'll see you guys in the next video.
Stay away from me, you murderer!